if you're obsessed, you know what you want, you're taking massive action, maybe you modeled somebody, figured the right action so you get there quicker, and you're executing, you still need a little grace. Some people call it luck, you could call it God, but I really believe that there's the part we do and then there's the part that comes to us. But I do know grace shows up a lot more when you do the first 2 steps on your own, and grace shows up a lot more when you acknowledge grace in your life, when you acknowledge that I was born in a world where I didn't have to build this internet that I can pull out of my pocket to answer anything on earth. I'm driving on streets I didn't pave. I'm reading books I didn't have to write. That's the gift of our lives. And I think when we experience that grace, we don't just experience more achievement, but we start to experience more fulfillment.
And grace not only affects your ability to get there, but it affects what you do and how you live once you are there.
It really determines the quality of your life, because unless you live in a state of gratitude, I did an interview with Sir John Templeton, and as you know, is one of the first billionaire investors and just a brilliant man. He came from nothing. And he donated, I think it was $750, they still do it, the Templeton Fund, I think it's $750 million a year. It's bigger than the Nobel Fund that he donates. And one day I asked him, I said, what is the secret to wealth? And he looked at me, paused, this big smile, and his eyes got really bright, like they always did. And he said, Tony, it's what you teach. I said, well, I teach a lot of things, which thing? And he said, gratitude. He said, because you and I, Tony, know billionaires that are miserable, and it's because they're not grateful for what they have. And we both know people have no money, seemingly, but they're so grateful for their health, for their husband, for their wife, for their children. They're so grateful to God, they're so grateful for their life that they're rich. So I think it starts with that gratitude. It starts with that connection to grace, as simplistic as that sounds. And so it's not enough just to have your financial plan. You can have all the money and be miserable. Let's have the money and be really rich emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. Disappointment either destroys you or drives you, and you have to decide which one it's going to be. If you don't consciously decide, there's always going to be more BS for you to deal with. And but that's why I think, when I do my events, the reason I do the 12 hours a day, it's not because I like talking. It's just that I can tell you something all day long, or I can get you to build the muscle.
Yeah.
And the build the muscle is by experiencing it. I always tell people a belief's a poor substitute for an experience. Like I could have a belief about you, but now I experience you. So I get to know who you are, right? The same thing's true as like you have a belief about China, you have a belief about working out. So I try to give people experiences that are so profound. And then, the studies they did, they found people 12 months later, 11 months later, we're still in the middle of COVID. They did my digital seminar, and they measured my body like the amount of times I jump 1,000 times in a day, and I weigh 282 pounds, and I come down 4 times the body weight, so it's 1,000 pounds times 1,000 pounds of pressure. My lactic acid, if you've ever been with a friend and you're running and you can't talk, the point you can't talk is a level 4 of lactic acid. I'm at an 18 and still speaking. So they decided to do that on my audience, and they found an interesting pattern. This is the same group that works with some of the Super Bowl champions and some of the Stanley Cup champions and so forth. There's a ratio in the body of testosterone versus cortisol, the stress hormone. And when the ratio is balanced, they call it the championship bloodline or bloodstream. It literally gets you to follow through. So when they did my audience in my live seminar, they found that people literally mirror me all the way through the experience.
That's phenomenal.
Biochemically.
That is phenomenal.
But then we did it, because all of a sudden, overnight they said to me, we're going to San Francisco, and the governor of California says, you can only have 10 people, and we got 15,000. So I was like, we'll go to Vegas. They'll never shut down Vegas. They shut down Vegas. So I was like, okay, we'll do 1,500 movie theaters with 10 people in them. They shut down the movie theaters. Like, okay, we'll go to a church in Houston. I got a buddy, I'll rent his church for 15,000 people. I'm not gonna keep Costco open and shut down the church. They kept Costco open and shut down the church. So I finally said, okay, I'm not gonna do some crappy little webinar. So I get this vision. I'm gonna build this facility with 20-foot high LED screens, 50 feet wide, all around me. I'm gonna call Eric Yon at Zoom. I'm gonna get them from 1,000 up to 25,000 people so I can interact with people live in real time. I'm gonna build an app so they can shake it, and the more people do it, the louder it gets, so it's real. So I built this whole thing. So now we're doing bigger events than ever in our entire history, but they did the same measurements on them in different parts of the world and saw the exact same mirroring process.
Wow.
And the average person,
even digitally, just to clarify that,
71% of the people, they had 71% drop in negative emotions, 53% improvement in positive emotions, and 11 months later, in the middle of COVID, it held. Because it's a biochemical change. So when people say, oh, I'm trying, I write books because it's an easy entry point to people. There's so much you can learn from a book, but there's nothing like the experience. That's why I do the events. And like this last 2 years, because of COVID, I did 2 like 6-day free events. We had 800,000 people attend for 6 days, just 4 weeks ago, because I just wanted people to have answers where they are. And then people start to see, they get momentum, but it's hard to do just reading something or watching a couple of, 20-minute or 15-minute or 5-minute little pieces on YouTube.
Yeah.
Those are great, they might inspire you. But a transformation requires immersion. It's like, if you ask the average person, did you study a foreign language in school? Most people, oh yeah, high school, college, speak it. They don't. But if you turn around and you said, okay, what if you want to learn Italian and I just took you to Rome and dumped you off for 6 weeks with no teacher, you're going to come back 6 weeks later speaking, Italian. So it's immersion. And if you want to master something, I think that's the thing most people don't do. They read a little bit, they listen a little bit, they dip in and out. They don't go day and night and day in total immersion in something that transforms them and also something that makes them push through their fears.
Yes.
Because in the end, that's the only thing that stops you. Everybody's got a story. I didn't know this person. I don't have the resources. They have all the things they don't have. But if you're resourceful, you can get the money, you can get the time, you can get the energy, you can get anything you want. And you've got to get over your fear to be resourceful. So we do experiences that are so physiologically profound that those fears do not stop you anymore. And that's how we get people to get, 10 years later, they're still transformed from an experience that was one weekend.